Hi everyone and welcome to our last lesson of the week. You've been doing so well this week. I'm so impressed with all of your hard work. So remember today to get something to write with and something to write on so that you can join in and write down your ideas as we are going along. Our learning objective today is to write a story with a beginning, a middle and an end. And our success criteria is to identify the events in the story, explore using your story S, and to apply the changes into your story. So I want you again to make sure you have your story S in front of you because it's going to be really useful for us today. And I want you to look at it carefully and retell your story out loud to yourself. So pause the video and do that. Retell your story out loud to yourself now. Wow, your story sounds so exciting. I can't wait to read your finished story. I'm going to retell my story out loud using my story S. So the beginning of my story is with Jill and her mum. And remember, Jill is my new character that I replaced Jack with. And Mum tells Jill to sell the cow at the market because they're very poor and they need some money. So Jill takes the cow to the market and she meets a mysterious old man who says, "I want the cow." But he doesn't give her money, instead he gives her beans. Jill is very excited by this and agrees to take the beans for the cow. But when she goes home and shows her mum the beans, her mum is not very impressed. She's very angry in fact, and she throws the beans outside. In the morning, Jill looks outside her window and she discovers that the beans have grown into a beanstalk. She's a very brave girl, so she decides to climb up the beanstalk, even though her mum tells her to be careful. She keeps climbing and climbing and climbing until her head is in the clouds, and she discovers a magical castle. She goes inside the castle and she sees a giant, and the giant has a magic hen that lays golden eggs, and the giant roars, "Fee, fi, fo, fum." Then Jill also discovers that he's got a golden harp that plays beautiful music. And the harp plays such beautiful music that it actually makes the giant fall asleep. When the giant falls asleep, Jill thinks this is her chance to steal the hen's eggs and the golden harp, so she takes them and she runs as quickly as she can back to the beanstalk. As she's climbing down the beanstalk, the giant wakes up and charges after her, shouting, "Fee, fi, fo, fum." But Jill is just too quick for him, and she manages to climb all the way down to the bottom. Then she grabs a sharp axe and chops the beanstalk down. And our story ends with Jill and her mum together. They're very happy and the beanstalk is no more. So today we're going to focus on the ending of our story because you've written the beginning. Yesterday you wrote the middle. So today you're going to write the end of your story. So I want you to pause the video now and I just want you to remind yourself not only about what you have written so far, so you can go and read that back to yourself, but then I also want you to look at your story S and remind yourself about what happens at the end of your story. So this is my ending to my story. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to read through what I have written, and I want you to see if I've used adjectives, see if I have used capital letters correctly and full stops correctly. Make sure I have used the past tense because remember, this story, our writing is going to be in the past tense. So pause the video now and read it carefully to yourself. Okay, I hope you liked it. I'm going to read it out loud to you now. The magical golden harp began to play a beautiful, soothing lullaby. Suddenly the giant closed his eyes and began to snore. He had fallen asleep. Now is my chance, thought Jill. She quickly and quietly ran towards the golden eggs and placed them into her bag. Then she grabbed the magic hen and held on to it tightly. She ran towards the door, but it was heavy and hard to open. Creak went the door as she pulled it towards her. The giant jumped up and looked straight at her. "Fee, fi, fo, fum," the giant roared, and stomped towards Jill. He was furious and terrifying. Jill kept running and then climbed onto the top of the beanstalk and began to climb down. The giant followed, but Jill was too fast. She had managed to escape and had the golden eggs and magic harp with her. She climbed down and down until she reached the ground and saw her small, cosy home. Jill grabbed a sharp axe and began to chop the beanstalk down. It crashed to the ground, and Jill went to find her mother. She told her mother about everything that had happened and showed her the golden eggs and the magical harp. Her mother was so proud of how brave Jill had been and relieved that she was safe. "We will never be poor again. We are rich thanks to you, Jill." So remember the past tense verbs. So these are what doing verbs. Snatched, climbed, through, tiptoed. These are all in past tense and they are verbs. And a verb tells us what a character or an object is doing. It tells us the actions. So I want you to look through my ending again, and I want you to read the text and identify where the verbs are in the text. So pause the video in a minute and I want you to write down on your paper any verbs that you can see. Wow, there's a lot. Don't worry if you didn't get all of these, but I have highlighted in red all of the verbs that were in the text. So if you see any of these, you can give yourself a tick. I have got began, play, these are all verbs, closed, snore, had, thought, ran, placed, grabbed, held, ran again, jumped, roared, crashed, told, chop. These are all verbs, they're doing words. So well done if you got these, or even some of them. Remember that these are what doing verbs. Here are some examples again. Snatched, climbed, through, and tiptoed. And a verb tells us what a character or an object is doing. It tells us the action. So now I want you to look at these sentences, and I want you to write down on your paper the verbs in the sentence. So the first one is Mr. Bear walked downstairs. The second sentence is the giant roared, fee, fi, fo, fum. And the last sentence is Eddie walked to the woods to find Freddie. Remember, the verbs are doing words, so I want you to write down on your paper for each sentence what the verb is. Well done. I've highlighted in red the verbs. Walked is a verb for the first sentence. Roared is the verb in the second sentence. And in the third sentence there are two. There's walked and to find. They are all doing words. They are verbs. Remember, a verb tells us what a character or an object is doing. It tells us the action. So you're going to write the ending of your story. This is the last part of your story. Remember, before you start writing, to read over what you've written so far, and then you can start writing your ending to your story. And remember, you're including your new character. Once you have finished your story, I want you to go back and reread everything you have written, because I want you to check that you have used capital letters correctly. I want you to check that you've used full stops correctly. Remember, you use them at the end of a sentence. I want to make sure that you've used your story S, so you've kept to your plan. And I want you to also make sure that your story has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Before you go, I have a challenge. And I want you to spot the mistake. So I've got 3 sentences here, and I think I have made some mistakes again. The first sentence is, Freddie was terrified when he saw the massive bear. The second sentence is, Jack sold the cow. The man gave him beans. And the last sentence is, oh no, I can't stand this, cried Mr. Bear. So pause the video now, write down on your paper what my sentences should be, because they are wrong. Fantastic for getting these. The first one, Freddie needs a capital letter, because Freddie is the name of someone, and there should have been a full stop at the end. The second sentence, Jack needed a capital letter because it's the name of someone, and there should have been a full stop at the end of that sentence, which meant that the should have been a capital letter because it's the first word after the full stop, and it was missing another full stop at the end. And with the last sentence, O for oh no should have been a capital letter because it's the first word in the sentence. I should be a capital letter, not only because it's the first word after a sentence, but also when you say I, it always needs to have a capital letter. And Mr. Bear needed capital letters because it's the name of someone. So fantastic work, well done. And there's a full stop at the end of that sentence too. Well done for your work this week. You've been doing so well. I can't wait to see your finished stories. Keep going right up to the very end, giving your 100% effort to make these stories fantastic. Thank you for everything you've done this week, and bye for now.